Look who we got here. Somebody that we haven't seen in about 20 years is
Hello there.
Late and great.
Good to see you.
George Humphrey.
Yes. Oh my goodness! I see who it is. Yes.
Tell us what you've been up to.
Oh my goodness! Isn't this a great day?
Yes.
It is amazing.
Tell us why you're here, hurry, because it's my Facebook.
My heart is heavy for the world, but my heart is also happy for the good people here. We need to get back to work, and we need to realize that this cure, it's not a cure, it's not about a virus, it's about political control. And we are free and sovereign, and we have the choice to either be slaves or to be free. I choose to be free, yes.
Well, guess what I did? I bought about $20,000 worth of editing equipment and hired some people to put all the tapes on for the last 25 years, and you're on there. So I want you to, and I'm going to plug my YouTube channel.
Okay, great.
Mike Hanson
Archives.
Of course. Hanson Archives and Waco Archives.
I didn't recognize you at the start.
Okay, so I need you to say, this is George Humphrey, and I love Mike Hanson Archives.
This is George Humphrey, and this guy is awesome. Mike Hanson, the Mike Hanson Archives. Check it out.
You're on there. We just put about 3 tapes of you on there. And you had slick black hair then.
Now it's all dyed.
All right. God bless y'all. We'll see you in a minute.
Hello, Austin, Texas, and we are back. Now, just briefly here before we get to our guest, we have a hot show for you today.
Oh.
In 1990, I was one of the first ones to come out in Austin, Texas publicly against Desert Storm. Desert Storm.
Storm fraud.
Now with us today, we have 2 illustrious guests. One is a former KVET radio host who's got a new job on the radio, and she's a dear friend of ours, Joyce Isaacs. And also in the studio, one of the leaders, if not the leader, in fighting for the Gulf War illness business, Miss Joyce Riley.
A true hero and patriot. She really is.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Okay, I want to just open it up then. Which one of y'all wants to go first?
Well, let Joyce.
Go ahead, Joyce.
She's an Army officer, an Air Force, and a nurse.
Houston,
Air Force.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm from Houston. I want to say that I had the pleasure of being here in Austin because of some Gulf War veterans and some very concerned people here. Wanted to have a meeting to show the evidence because, you know, we've been talking about this on the radio for a long time. In fact, Carl's Wigglesworth show was kind enough to have us on the air the other day also, and Keith Perry on his micro-broadcasting station. And I want to say that I don't want anyone to believe me just because I say this. Don't believe me just because you're hearing it on the radio or you see something on TV, because that's the problem we're into right now with the Pentagon and the information they're putting out. So we came to Austin to put on the information, to show the evidence, which we did last night at the American Legion. And by doing that, we showed evidence of whether or not this Gulf War illness is real. Is it as serious as everybody says? And has the U.S. government known this information since 1991 and failed to tell the American public? So we left it open for the public to see. We left it open for the public to decide in their own minds, is this true or not? Because if people understand what is happening right now, if I am correct in what I am saying, that means we have a Pentagon right now that has lied to the American people, lied to our military, allowed them to get sick, allowed them to die, and allowed them to transfer this disease to other people.
Well, now, wait a minute, Joyce. It's easy to believe you because you were there, weren't you?
Well, I wasn't in the theater of operations, and this is why this is part of my story. I did not go to Desert Storm. I served.
But you found out about, you were one of the pioneers that found out about this.
Oh, I got sick. That'll teach you real quick you got a problem.
Really quick.
That's right. And what happened was, as a flight nurse in the Air Force Reserve, I volunteered to go back at Kelly Air Force Base in the 32nd AES to participate in Operation Desert Storm. I was supposed to go to Saudi Arabia the week of the ceasefire, so I did not go. But as a result of that, what I did at that point was I made sure
Can
that...
I interrupt you just a minute, Joyce? Yeah, either that or just put up a slate for a minute. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm sorry to interrupt you all like this. Our wide shot here is cutting Joyce off. Okay, by
I
the
think
way,
your audience probably.
there we go. That's better.
Magic of TV.
Yeah.
I think your audience probably understands.
Live television.
And so what I did was, as a flight nurse and volunteered to go back to Desert Storm, was I volunteered to go to Kelly Air Force Base. I did not go to the theater of operations because of the ceasefire, but I did fly around in a C-130 from Alaska to Cuba doing missions and trying to serve my country. And I want to say that to every veteran out there and to every person listening to this program, you joined the military for the right reasons. And I am a very pro-America person, pro-military. I am not anti-American, I am not anti-military, and I want that clearly understood here. That I support this form of government, and I would have died for it, and I still would die for it. But we have now a credibility problem with our Pentagon that is more serious than anything that I can imagine. And the allegations that I am making against the Department of Defense, the Pentagon, the CIA, and the Veterans Administration is more serious than anything that anyone is saying anywhere in this country.
What exactly is it, just for people who haven't heard what exactly is it that you kind of stumbled onto this?
Well, I became ill. I've served as a flight nurse from January to July of 1991. From July to December, I became ill and was hospitalized in December of 1991 at St. Luke's Hospital in Houston. And as a result of that, I was diagnosed with some type of unknown central nervous system disorder, similar to multiple sclerosis, which many, many Gulf War veterans have. This is not just me.
Scares me to
Many
death.
Gulf War veterans have MS. So I was diagnosed with this, and it took me over the next year to get better, and finally I started to recuperate, and I'm okay today. But I was treated early on, and the whole entire reason that I am doing what I am doing is because there are those that are dying right now. There are family members that are sick as a result of this disease, and I want it stopped. I want the Pentagon to come forward with the truth. I want the American people to understand there is a Gulf War illness.
But
There's
Joyce,
a Gulf
that's
War
the
illness
most
that's
frightening
real.
thing. You never were in the Gulf War theater, you say.
That's right.
But you got it from somewhere.
Yes.
And other family members of veterans have gotten it. This makes me cold when I think of it, because it's just, is it airborne? I mean, what, do we have any idea?
Okay, let me give this part as my opinion, and very little of what I say is opinion, because I use evidence, I use documents to prove what I'm saying. So that the people listening will not think that this is just my opinion, let me preface it by saying, first of all, I'm not a physician and I'm not giving medical advice tonight. This is based on documents. Everything that I say to you is based on documents, unless I tell you differently. Now, this is my opinion. I believe 75% of the illness that Gulf War veterans are experiencing is due to the vaccinations that we received. Vaccinations that our own country gave us that were experimental, that were not necessarily to protect us during wartime, that had ulterior motives. 25% of the disease, I believe, is due to biological, chemical, and nuclear exposures. Now, we have people that obviously suffered from chemical exposures at Camisea and many other areas that were detonated over there. We know there were nuclear plants that were blown up in Iraq. We know that there were chemical and biological munitions areas that were blown up, and we know that the exposure from that has affected our troops. Now, my concern, though, and I want to separate right now biological from chemical. Chemical may be sarin gas or Tabun gas. Chemical may be oil well fires, exposure to oil well fires, environmental exposures. But the concern I have is not those three, because you don't bring home an oil well fire problem after the war and give it to your family.
Right.
Biological is a whole different arena, and biological is the exposure to viral, rickettsial, bacteriological, or fungal agents that can be spread to other people. So we know that our troops were somehow exposed to a biological agent. Now, did our country do it? Did Iraq do it? I don't know that we're going to know the full answer to that, but I know that I was nowhere over there.
Right. Okay.
And your point is well made. So right after the war, when I became so ill with a disease that they said they'd never seen before and symptoms they'd never seen before, I wanted to know where it came from, and I called Veterans Administration, I called the DOD, and of course my response from them was, there's nothing wrong with you, nobody's sick, everybody's fine, thank you very much, don't bother to call us back. That's when I knew we had a problem, because, you know, epidemiologically, if a nurse calls you, and by the way, I've been a nurse for 25 years, And let me just establish who I am and what I've done before this. I just didn't come out from under a rock in 1993 and start yelling conspiracy, Gulf War. I have been a director of nursing for 2 hospitals in San Antonio, for a long-term care facility. I've taught nursing courses. I've lectured. I've done a lot of things in the nursing arena for 25 years. I was the most naive person. I mean, I knew there were these 2 houses in Washington. One was called Congress and one was called the Senate. But other than that, I knew very little, literally. I was not involved in anything.
I don't know if you were naive or like a lot of us, you were trusting.
Yes, yes.
Maybe that's a better word. Because
was
you're
I?
sitting next to a veteran. How long were you in the Air Force?
13 years.
See?
United States Air Force. Yeah.
13 years, wow.
I actually, see, I made this, we'll get into maybe a little bit of this later, Joyce, but I kind of disagree with your initial statement that, one of your statements, that, see, I completely distrust this government. I think that most of these wars now are nothing more than international bankers just fattening their wallets.
All right, but did you know that 13 years ago when you joined the
No,
military?
I didn't.
That's what I'm talking
right,
about.
Right.
Yeah,
but I mean, there has to come to a realization that we were duped. When
That's
we were
right.
Right.
And if you'd been talking to me like this, or saying these things in 1989, I would have said, get away from me.
He's just,
I don't want to
he's a
talk to you."
crazy.
That's
yeah.
right. Because I was the most pro-military person. My father was in the Army Air Corps. My mother was in the Navy. My mother outranked my father, so I always say that I came
That's
from a
great.
dysfunctional,
Dysfunctional military family.
Right. But, and you know, and I say this to let people know, I am not anti-military. I loved it. I mean, going up in a C-130 was the greatest source of satisfaction in being a flight nurse that I could have imagined.
But Joyce, if you didn't love this country and you didn't love the military, then you wouldn't have to be doing what you're doing. You do love this country, and that's why you've got to stand up and because something is terribly wrong.
That's right.
Not only that, we 3 times I raised my hand in a vow to defend and protect the Constitution of the United States from all enemies, both foreign and domestic. And I can honestly say, Joyce, I have maintained that vow.
Mm-hmm. That's right, you have. And you know, I never understood what domestic enemies even meant when I took that. I never understood. In fact, with George Bush in 1987, I believe it was, I invited him to come to Houston, sign an organ donor card, and be involved with a big PR for organ transplantation, because I was a national organ donor nurse at that time. And I met George Bush and Barbara Bush, greatest people in the world, I thought, and I had no idea I was getting ready to be poisoned by my country. I had no idea what these people represented. And so as a result of that, and like we were talking about, how did I figure out what was going on with me? What did I have in that was correlating with what the other Gulf War veterans had? The only 2 things we had in common was we received the same vaccinations, and I had exposure to the troops.
And those are the two variables right there.
That's
that was
right.
it.
That's right.
That was your.
So that's all I had to begin with. So I said, I know something happened to me during the Gulf War. I know it. I'm sick. I have this inability to use my legs that was transient. It would come and go. I was trying to work as a heart transplant nurse in Houston at the time. It was very taxing. I worked 16-hour shifts. I was not afraid of work. I could work with anyone, work with the best of them. And so for them to tell me that, oh, you just don't want to work any longer or something, there was nothing to that.
When you have a passion for your profession.
Sure. But this was a physical thing. And that's the problem we've got right now, is because Gulf War veterans are being labeled as having this mental disorder now if they come forward and say they've got Gulf War illness.
Oh, is that the latest strategy?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, the intimidation is incredible what they are doing. So if you're a Gulf War veteran and you go to the VA hospital, I don't care if you're hemorrhaging, I don't care what's wrong with you. The first thing the VA facility does is give you a psychological evaluation if you're a Gulf War veteran, and from 2 to 12 hours worth of testing. Then they will pin some type of PTSD disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, some type of diagnosis that can be related to a psychological disease, so that then they can say, oh, well, he's got a psychological problem. This is not a real illness.
But we had we should have realized that this might happen again, because the Vietnam vet wasn't treated very well. And when they kept saying, this is happening to my body, and that's happening to my body, and, we're having children, there's something wrong, and, nobody wanted to hear that either, did they?
Well, you're exactly right. And that's why I say I owe every Vietnam veteran an apology. Because when they were coming back from over there and were sick, I was listening to the news media. I was a young buck nurse getting ready to join the Air Force Reserve, and they told me, the media told me, these guys are a bunch of guys who came back with a foot fungus and want to be taken care of for a lifetime.
They're babies. They're just
And I believed
squallish,
it.
yeah.
They're a bunch of gold bricks. And I believed that. I didn't know they had a disease that might kill them. I didn't know they were going to have deformed children later on. And do you know that we have never, ever treated any of the Agent Orange veterans? They've never been treated to this day. They've been given a check for $600 and told to go away and thank you very much.
$600?
The majority of them have been paid less than $1,000. And so we now have, and everybody thinks they've been taken care of because the good media on behalf of the Pentagon that, you know, Clinton came out and said, oh, we're going to take care of these veterans. They were not taken care of. And now the wives that are married to Vietnam veterans now have sons that are Gulf War veterans. And we have a Vietnam Veterans Wives group that is just formed for that reason. And the sad part is, those women are in charge of making a quilt now for all of the deaths of Agent Orange and the deaths of Gulf War illness, to which the Pentagon has never, ever addressed the deaths of these people.
Did this not come to, now these are all whitewashes, these so-called investigations, but did this not come to a House investigation?
It did. And there was only one real true investigation. And by the way, the report of that investigation has been taken out of the government printing office. You can't even purchase it any longer. This is 103-900, and it is the United States dual-use exports to Iraq, and it's the Committee Housing, Banking, and the Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs.
We're going to go ahead and get a close-up of that. I would hope, yeah.
That's this is a 600-page document that's no longer available from the government printing office. And if I were a Gulf War veteran, I'd be pretty furious to know that I couldn't find out why I was sick. It's in here. It's all in here. This is Senator Don Riegel's committee, in which he did this in 1993 and 1994, came out with his final report. And the report is scathing. It literally calls this a cover-up. It talks about the antibiotics that were effective for Gulf War veterans in 1993. It talks about the violent mental attacks they're having right now, in which they're doing violent crimes, Gulf War veterans. It mentions everything. It talks about the company that sold those biological warfare agents to Saddam Hussein, right here in the United States.
I was going to say, you're going to tell us, aren't you, that they came from here?
Absolutely.
Well,
absolutely.
We created him. Why shouldn't we sell him?
We did. We created him. We created Saddam Hussein. Let me tell you the 4 things that this report says that you've not heard from the United States government. First of all, the summary of this 600-page document is 1, nuclear and biological and chemical agents were used. 2, our troops are not just sick, they are dying. 3, the disease is communicable. And 4, we knowingly exported to Saddam Hussein, with the full knowledge of the Department of Commerce and the CDC, the weapons of mass destruction, the biological warfare agents. Which brings us into the whole thing now as to where we stand with Saddam Hussein, which is another whole story we'll get to in a minute. But I think that's very important to understand what is going on now. Has a lot to do with what has been covered up over the past 4 or 5 years from the American people, because now it's all going to come out. Their house of cards is going to fall down.
You think so?
I do.
They've kept a pretty good house of cards for a long time.
They sure have. But General Schwarzkopf...
Not just in this, but in everything else.
Yes.
But,
Yeah.
but this is just blatant.
Yes, you do. It is.
It's just blatant.
You know, you've got too many dying veterans right now. And General Schwarzkopf, in 1993, we made a video that has evidence on it, strictly evidence. And in it, we accused General Schwarzkopf of not having told the truth in September of this year before a committee hearing. And all of a sudden, 3 weeks after this video comes out and is on the Art Bell Show, General Schwarzkopf admits on September 15th, 1997, that he did not tell the Senate the truth when he testified in 1997. This is the first big domino to fall.
Get a close-up of that real quick.
This was in September 15th of 1997, USA Today. And I will tell you that this is going to be the beginning. Gulf illness treated cavalierly. And I'll read you a statement from this. The statement is, Gulf War illness in the years following 1991 conflict with Iraq was handled very cavalierly by the Pentagon, says Schwarzkopf. Schwarzkopf told Gannett News Service he regretted not telling senators earlier this year about a chemical weapons case involving an Ohio soldier. It says unpublished battlefront reports showing that Schwarzkopf knew about the soldier in 1991 raised questions about why he told Congress this year he had no knowledge of anyone being exposed to chemical weapons. Then over here, they asked Schwarzkopf why he didn't tell the truth, and he said, I wish I had now. It wasn't a question of it slipping my mind. I should have told the truth. Now, this is the unpublished battlefront report that General Schwarzkopf did not reveal. We put a copy of it in our documentation package that was in the video. And this is an actual nuclear, biological, and chemical log of General Schwarzkopf. This is an NBC log dated 3 March of 1991. And General Schwarzkopf had to read these documents every single day.
Right.
It came from Central Command, CENTCOM. And General Schwarzkopf had full knowledge of this information. Now, that's what an NBC log looks like. It's been declassified, and they are not available any longer. If you do a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request, it's not going to look like this. It's going to be redacted. But we have some of the copies, the original ones, and we're making them as fast as we can. But let me just read to you what General Schwarzkopf knew. At 15:15 in the afternoon, that's 3:15, it says, Lieutenant Colonel Wade advised that Colonel Dunn has confirmed that the soldier of the 3rd Armored Division does have blisters characteristic of H. mustard chemical agent. Now, see, the question had been raised, were there any biological or chemical exposures? And he said no, there was none. In fact, the official statement from the Pentagon is, there is no evidence, classified or unclassified, to show that biological or chemical agents were used. And that's an absolute lie. An absolute lie.
Joyce, it's just such a big lie. I mean, it's just so, it's more than a lie, it's betrayal.
Well, it is. It's a betrayal, but it is also a public health hazard, because even if we talk about what happened with the Gulf War veterans over there, and General Schwarzkopf's not telling the truth, that's one thing. But now, look at the innocent people. Austin was a military town during that time. How many military people have now transferred this disease to someone else?
Is that the right number, Joyce?
281?
That's correct.
Okay.
587-5436.
Right, that's
Yeah.
the number that they can contact if they need to get in touch with me, because we don't want anyone left frustrated or without any place to turn to, because this is too serious a
But,
subject.
right, you're saying Austin is a military town, right?
And because of its being a military town, San Antonio being a huge
Right.
military town.
Oh, yes.
I mean, now we're having large numbers of cases of a new disease that nobody ever heard about before 1991, that everybody's taking for granted now, called fibromyalgia. Nobody
That-
ever heard about it before 1991.
No, but, and,
Is that all correct?
is that right? Is that
That's
your
it.
website,
That's our website.
www?
Has the address is fine?
The website is www.gulfwarvets.com, but it's all small letters, not large letters. www.gulfwarvets.com, and our address is Gulf War 3506 Highway 6 South, number 117, Sugarland, Texas, 774-78-4401. The phone number is 281-587-5437. You can leave a number and I can get back to you. And again, the website is www.gulfwarvets.com.
Okay, and what were you saying? What is fibromyalgia?
Fibromyalgia.
Okay, because that in the talk show circuit, that's a word that has come into being. That's funny you should say that, because I thought, well, I'm just dumb, right, Jeff? I didn't know that word. But I would say probably in the last 10 months or a year, maybe, that word has started to come up again and again. And so that's it. That's all. That
Well,
explains a lot.
Did you ever hear about fibromyalgia before 1991? Did you, Jeff?
No, I haven't. In fact, I haven't even heard of it before you did.
Well, you're a whole different case, though, Jeff. You're a whole
I'm
different
way out there.
Listen to the radio. Okay.
Okay, how about chronic fatigue syndrome?
Oh, I've
Yeah,
got
sometimes
that.
I think I have
we
that.
have
Okay.
that. Yeah.
All right, chronic fatigue is a big disease that you've seen in epidemic proportion since 1991. Now, what we now know is that 62% of the chronic fatigue patients are now positive for the same biological warfare agent the Gulf War veterans have. Now, where does this come from? Why do we have people reporting that they have been doctors and nurses taking care of Gulf War veterans and now they have the disease? And they test positive in their blood for it. So we're not talking people that are just, being biased by what they hear or wanting to play sick or take on the symptoms. We're talking about people that are actually testing positive now. And this blood test, by the way, maybe I should explain, we have identified a biological warfare agent. It is called Mycoplasma incognitus. It is a biological warfare agent that is not found in nature. We believe it's man-made. The DNA sequences are so rare, it's got to be man-made. It was identified at the MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston.
Who identified that?
Dr. Garth Nicholson. You've probably had him on your program, haven't you?
I'm baiting her. Yeah, he and his wife. Well, isn't his wife Nancy? Is that
Dr.
her name?
Nancy Nicholson.
She's a doctor, but their daughter got sick, didn't she?
That's right.
Right. And so you three are probably the big flies in the ointment because you
Well,
came
we're the
up
pain
with
in the backside of the Pentagon now.
Well, I was going to let you say it, but I'd be proud to be the back.
too.
Yeah, that's it. But you three, and you're all 2 doctors and a very experienced nurse. And of course, he lost his job. Can I say that on the air?
Sure.
Yeah, he lost his job because he was telling the truth.
That's right. He was a tenured professor for 15 years at the MD Anderson Cancer Center. He and Dr. Nancy Nicholson identified this biological warfare agent, and I think it's important to understand why. His daughter was on a Black Hawk helicopter doing deep insertions into Iraq. She comes back with a disease in 1991, and all of a sudden the entire family gets the disease. Now, he was trained to go into a lab and find out why there is a disease.
That's what he does.
Causes it.
That's right. That's what he does.
He's a cell biology professor.
And we better, just kiss the ground he walks on because no
He's
telling.
a hero.
He's a hero not only in this but in many other things in his life, Joyce. He's made our lives better.
He is one of the, probably, 60 Minutes told me that they said he's one of the most well-respected cancer researchers in America.
Right. Yes, in this entire country.
Yes.
And this is how he got repaid for telling the truth.
Yeah.
I'm about to cry. It makes me so mad, Joyce.
I know.
Well, it just makes me furious.
Have you met him before?
No,
He's
just
an
on the
incredible
phone.
person.
Just on the phone.
He is an incredible person. He wants nothing more than to see Gulf War veterans treated. And so for 3 years, he collected blood samples at MD Anderson Cancer Center and tested them at his own expense. And he told me one time on a Sunday afternoon, he came in, he said, Joyce, I just came in and they've unhooked my freezer again. And his freezer of specimens was left to heat up, and it didn't happen. Then they were able to save the specimens. But then he was later told that if he didn't stop the Gulf War research, that he was essentially out of there. So he did, and he went to California. There are only 2 places in the country that now test for this biological warfare agent, and that is, both of them are in California. One is Dr. Nicholson, and then there's another lab in California. But you don't have very many labs that test for biological warfare agents because up until 1991, we didn't need it.
Well, and according to a lot of people now, we don't have it anywhere, right?
That's correct.
So,
Yeah.
there
In
you
fact,
are.
We should talk about what the official government position is right now. The Pentagon position.
Let me just mention first, folks, if y'all, this is a live program. Do you mind taking some calls later at the end?
Please.
Okay. We've been running tapes down here. This is a live program, so if y'all want to, it's 477 ACTV, folks. 477 ACTV if you want to talk to Joyce Isaacs or Joyce Riley. They'll be visiting with us.
Or Jeff Davis.
Or me, but I'm actually learning from this because I have to admit I don't know a whole lot about what she's saying, but it is interesting.
And I hope you and I don't need to know very much about it.
right.
That's a very selfish, but I just, it makes me mad. But this is another thing we might bring up. It looks like we're going to get back into it with him sooner or later. And when I just think about things, don't laugh, I used to write farm scripts, anthrax and those things. This man, he has no regard for anything but his way in the world. And we may all, who knows what could happen to us, Joyce. Now, if you're not concerned about veterans, you better start being concerned about yourself.
I want to just make sure I understand. You're basically stating that you believe that through vaccines that our military people were pumped whatever is causing this.
I think the majority of those, especially those that didn't go over there, because there are those that did not go to Saudi Arabia that are just as sick, and those that did go that are sick. And I think the ones that did go probably got a combination of both the chemical and biological
A double
exposures.
whammy, yeah.
Yes, and the vaccines. Now, I myself think that I probably got whatever is relative to the vaccinations. And let me go into the speculative a little bit, because this is not something that I could actually prove to you, although the Washington Times says that they can prove it. And
The Washington Times says that?
yes. And the Washington Times and Insight Magazine printed an article about the sickness and secrecy of the Gulf War illness, and I'll just show here. They printed this, it was by Paul Rodriguez, August 25th of 1997, and he talks about the use of something called squalene. That squalene is being found in the blood of Gulf War veterans now, and to the tune of about 300, a majority of 400 of them
Well, what is
had squalene.
What is
Okay,
it?
squalene is a synthetic adjuvant, a compound that is used only in 2 instances that we know about in the United States right now. So if you have squalene in your blood, that means you've been exposed to one of these 2 things. Number 1, it's an experimental malarial compound that has not been used widely, and the second one is an anti-AIDS vaccine. Now, the thesis of what Washington Times and the British press is saying, as well as Insight Magazine, is that Gulf War veterans were the recipient of anti-AIDS experimental vaccines during the Gulf War.
Without their knowledge.
Without their knowledge. Now, if this is true, I would think that every American would rise to their feet immediately and say, I'm sorry, that's it. You don't do that to our people without their knowledge. Because we're not talking about giving immunizations to people for the sake of protecting them in a battle zone area. You don't need an anti-AIDS vaccine.
And that's right.
The reason they did it was because, as you know, in the military, you get tested mandatorily whether you want to or not, so you're the best guinea pig group in the world.
Yeah, I often wonder what those shots they were pumping me with.
That's right, and you
As
don't
I
have any
found
way of
out
knowing.
these things, yeah.
Yeah, and your shot record has a bunch of little squiggly lines on it.
Have you heard the rumors about that the AIDS virus could be a man-made deal? Have you
The
heard?
rumors?
Well,
I've heard the rumors.
Well, that's I'll leave it at that.
I've heard more than that, but no rumors about it. But yeah, I think that we need to start
Part of the
looking
population control program.
I
You
think
don't go
there's-
that far, huh? Or maybe you do. I don't know. See, I don't know that much about Joyce.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you exactly what I think. I think if you take your military and you put them in a theater of operations and they get exposed to something, I don't care if it's cannon fodder. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's alien dust, if such a thing exists. I don't care what it is. And you bring those people back here and those people say, I'm sick, and you start writing them off as being head cases and you don't treat them when you know a treatment exists, that is intentional. That is criminal intent to allow those people to die. Yes, I'm accusing them of that. Absolutely. Because they know that the antibiotics are effective. I was treated with the antibiotics. That's what Dr. Nicholson is treating.
Wait a minute. In other words, if they were treated with the antibiotic, if our government would be honest about what's going on, Joyce, we could probably help a lot of people.
Oh, we could have saved thousands of lives.
What is it? An antibiotic is it anything that's we might know?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And here's my disclaimer. I am not a physician. I'm not practicing medicine, but Dr. Garth Nicholson recommends the antibiotic doxycycline.
Doxycycline.
It's a tetracycline derivative.
I was going to say
Very
it's
cheap.
and I think probably you get that for other things your doctor may
Sure.
prescribe. Yes.
But if you're a DOD facility or a VA facility, you are not allowed to give a Gulf War veteran doxycycline. Now, isn't that interesting?
Now wait a minute. You're not allowed to prescribe those in those 2
No.
facilities.
They're not allowed to. In fact, I've had many physicians call me from the VA system saying that they get audited, they get reprimanded, and it's just simply not available to Gulf War veterans. Now, the reason being, and I've had them explain this to me. See, first of all, the disease we're talking about here, the mycoplasma, is sensitive to doxycycline. I was treated with it. Hundreds of Gulf War veterans have been treated. But you can't get it at a DOD facility or VA facility, so you have to go to a doctor outside. But most doctors don't know anything about it because the Pentagon tells them there's no Gulf War illness, right? So they're going to say, I'm sorry, you need to go to the VA and get your Prozac and be quiet. That's what they are giving. Over 90% of the Gulf War veterans that have contacted me have been offered Prozac by the Veterans Administration. Now, do we see a problem here? They're saying that 90% of the Gulf War veterans that went to fight the war over there are head cases. That 600,000 of our veterans are head cases? I don't think so.
Right, our veterans that at that time, they were certainly good enough to lay their life on the line for me, weren't they?
That's right. And they were willing to die for this country. That's their only crime. That's the only thing they can be convicted of doing anything wrong. They were willing to die for this country. And now we repay them by placing them on Prozac. And I cannot tell you the problems we're seeing from that. The veterans that are doing acts of violence, the veterans that are committing suicide. It is very, very frightening. And that's the reason I'm on here tonight, and I appreciate your giving me the opportunity to say this, is if you're a veteran and you're sick, don't give up. Because we're here for you. There are people that are here for you, and don't give up. Do not think your country has abandoned you. Your country doesn't know about this yet, but they're going to know. And I want every veteran to know that there are people everywhere that do care and want to know the truth about this.
And the lady you're looking at right now, you're the one. You're really the hero.
Well,
and I would think that you wonder how many phone calls you've taken. One, you know, because you just have always said, you know, call me, call me, call me. I'm here. And your life is at this point, and your husband's too, it revolves around this, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's all we do. That's all we think about. Day and night now we get Gulf War veterans phone calls, especially from the 82nd Airborne, the 101st Airborne, the Big Red 1 out of Kansas. They're really sick. They're very sick. 3rd Armored Division, 2nd Armored Division, Fort Bliss, a lot of those people are sick. Fort Bragg is a very sick base. And they're not allowed, if they're still in the military, to talk about it. Now, here's a statistic that's very important, and that is that 90% of the Gulf War veterans that served are already out of the military. So that's including Guard, Reserve, and active duty. 90% are already out. So Colin Powell said there was going to be a downsizing right after the war of 25%. We've seen 90%. The Big Red 1 in Kansas was letting out people to the tune of 350 a day because they knew they were going to be sick. They knew they had these exposures. They knew there were going to be problems because people started getting sick during the Gulf War. So now we've got the problem of what's happened to these people. They're in your city. They're in everybody's city now. And the problem with chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia is that this disease affects now the general population. 6 million fibromyalgia patients, 18 million chronic fatigue patients. Where did these come from? Well, we know that mycoplasma has been experimented with by the U.S. government since 1970, late 1970s and 1980s, as a carrier agent for other things. And now we don't know what it's carrying. But we know that about 40% of the people that contact us at the American Gulf War Veterans Association have damage to their immune systems. They're suffering from multiple sclerosis, Guillain-Barré, Lou Gehrig's, scleroderma, lupus, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. Very serious diseases.
Let me just say this, Joyce. Can I? This is just my opinion, my opinion is that we're not going to get very far. Well, I mean, you're obviously doing good work with all this, but I mean, with what you've said here tonight, you know, you're accusing the DOD and Pentagon of cover-ups and all, and I totally agree with all that. But then when you make a statement to the point that these people were over there fighting for this country, that's to me that's kind of defeating the whole purpose for this, because that's not, in my opinion, that's not what this was all about.
Okay, well, let's say that's what we believed we were doing.
Yeah, that's okay. That needs to be stressed then, because as long as we continue to maintain these lies and throwing out this rhetoric that the other side throws out,
but I
think it's going to be harder to get people to accept this.
But in good faith is what we all are trying to say, isn't it? In good faith, men and women said, "I will go fight," right?
I will serve.
Right.
That's right.
And that's exactly what you were doing.
Sure.
But do you come to understand now that we were dupes?
Absolutely, I know that.
Those wars have nothing to do with protecting the Constitution or defending or protecting the borders of the United States.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, that was a 6 o'clock news war.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, I think all you have to do is look at what's going on right now with Saddam Hussein. I mean, we're going to go to war with a guy, or we started all this escalation because somebody put a piece of paper over a lens camera and wouldn't let them see in the room what was in the room. I mean, is that a reason to go fight a war, or is that affecting our boundaries?
Not why we're doing.
Of course
we're
not.
doing it because he's usurping the UN resolution. So we're supposed to send our young 18, 19-year-old people to go fight because he's not
Right.
his airplanes are usurping the UN no-fly zone.
Oh,
That's what we're supposed
wait.
to be doing now.
No, wait, let me give you some information here. Here's some little-known information. That no-fly zone is not a UN-imposed no-fly zone. Were you aware of that?
Well, that's what the media is telling us, isn't it? That the reason why the weapons inspections, here's Iraq, a sovereign nation supposedly,
Right.
And they're being forced now by this thug agency called the UN to have their nation violated. Plus, the Iraq is disobeying the UN no-fly zone.
That's not a UN no-fly zone. See, that's what they've made you think.
No, well, that's what
That's
they're
a
telling us.
U.S. It's a U.S. imposed no-fly zone, and we bought into it. That's why only U.S. planes go over that no-fly zone. No UN flights go over that.
It's
So the
us,
U-2
right.
flights, the U-2 flights are the UN-imposed area, or the UN-imposed. Those are the UN flights.
Our spy
But you
planes.
see, I was talking
But the
to.
point is, neither one of those reasons are worth me sending my son
Absolutely
to go
not.
die.
No way.
Okay.
No way. But I'm just
Never.
saying that we don't even know what's true when it comes to the no-fly zone area. Also, Nazar Hamdoun, who was talking to a friend of mine who wrote the book on Saddam Hussein, and she is not pro-Arab or pro-Israeli, and neither am I. I'm
Right.
just saying
We're just
she happened
here.
to do a biography
Right.
book on him. It's in all the libraries now. But her name is Nita Renfrew, and she was talking to Nazar Hamdoun the other day, who is the UN Iraq ambassador to the UN. Nazar Hamdoun had said two things to say. First of all, people don't realize that is a U.S. imposed no-fly zone, and secondly, he has not been allowed before the UN Security Council. Now ask me or tell me why we would not allow someone to go before the UN Security Council when we are going to exhaust all means of diplomacy. Why is it that we have not allowed Nazar Hamdoun to go before the UN Security Council? I don't understand that either. So there's a lot of information we're not getting. We watch the boob tube and we watch 6 o'clock news. And if it happens on the 6 o'clock news, it's true to most people. And that's why I use the statement, if a tree falls in the forest and Dan Rather doesn't cover it, does it still make a noise?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way people are. If it's not on the news, it didn't happen.
Good girl.
But,
That's
but
good.
my point is taken by you. And
You are
that is
exactly
that
right.
Neither one of those reasons are worth
No way.
any of us sending our
No way.
18-year-old kids to go die.
Absolutely not. But I mean, I'm saying that even that is a protracted reasons that don't even exist. I'm thinking that the whole thing is made up to the point where it serves another agenda.
Well,
Yeah.
and
and
none
I-
of those reasons are worth
I
us
keep
going and
telling
fighting.
you, we created Saddam.
What's
Absolutely.
happening with the video?
Uh,
What's happening with the...
oh, I don't. Did you take Dan Rather's name in vain? It's off. Little joke
I don't
there.
know
Ease
what's
up
happening
some.
now.
I don't
I
either.
think, well, for
Something.
some
Our
reason
monitor's down. Okay, and we can't
maybe our
tell.
monitor's down, or I don't know what's happening.
Okay, let's go
We're
on.
still on?
Okay, it's all right.
you turn
It's
it
just
over
the
to-
monitor. It's the monitor. Okay.
Okay, let me just mention a couple things here, folks. First off, we have these. We're entering into about our 7th month now of these downsizing government seminars, and when are you scheduled to be there, Joyce?
Last Sunday of January.
It's 30th.
Is it
Okay.
30th of January?
So, 6 weeks from now, you're gonna be
Correct.
there. Okay, and it's the last Sunday of every month. And Joyce, you commented last week that we may find you out there.
Well, now that I'm ambulatory, unless I get some of the stuff she's talking about, I catch everything, Joyce. And if you start, thank goodness she's a nurse. No, I'll be there. I've been out long enough. I need to be loose now.
Now, also on the February edition, I believe it's February 22nd, the Jeff Davis Show has managed to get several of the surviving Branch Davidians down here to Austin for the seminar. So that's something to look forward to. And I believe in March we have tentatively, I think we have Tex Mars, a friend of mine, scheduled to be there, and of course the regular host of speakers and whatnot. So that's one thing.
Do you know how lucky you are to have Tex Mars here?
Oh, Tex is a great guy. Yeah.
He's
I
incredible.
just did a bunch of shortwave with him.
I mean, I don't think Austin understands how fortunate they are to have him here.
And one other thing, folks, we are starting a second series down here. Okay, we're starting a second series down here. It's starting on the pagan festival day, with what I call it, Christmas. It's the beginning of the winter solstice under the disguise of Christ. But we're starting on December 25th, Thursday at 5 p.m. But it's going to be Thursdays from 5 to 6 p.m. We're starting a second. It's a tape series beginning in, it's about 2.5 weeks from now. It's going to start on, like I say, the pagan festival for the people who celebrate that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And, of course, our show Mondays on Channel 10. Now, we've had some callers that have been holding for a long time. You want to go?
Let's talk to them.
Yeah, Joyce needs to talk. Anybody needs to talk with Joyce, you need to do it now. We need to talk.
Okay, who's the first caller on the air?
Joyce, Riley.
Pardon me?
Joyce?
Yes, sir. What's your first name?
I'm Pat.
Hi, Pat.
I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I went to a post-traumatic stress unit up there in Topeka, Kansas. And my two roommates up there were Gulf War veterans. About 2 months after I got out of that program, I came up with looked like all kinds of little pimples all over my body. And then they spread out, and they looked like ringworms. They were about the size of an orange, about 6 inches around. And they said, well, it wasn't ringworms, so they gave me this fungal cream. They said, you must have picked something up in the shower or something, which was impossible because every time someone takes a shower, they sprayed it down with Clorox and water. Okay. Anyway, it got worse and worse and worse. I didn't run any fever or any temperatures or anything, but I slept all the time. And they gave me DEX, like cycline. It was white pills. And they gave me this antibiotic cream. It's TRIAMCINOLONE, acetondine. They gave me that. Then they cut out a bunch of, little sections and sent it into 5 or 6 different major, clinics to see what it was, and it all came back negative. They couldn't decide, or they wouldn't tell me what it was. Do you think that's Gulf War syndrome?
Well, let me tell you that I cannot diagnose anything because I'm not a physician.
I'm just. Does it sound like it?
Thanks for your call, Pat. I want to get on some other calls.
Right, here. Pat. And did you get the phone number?
Ahead, Joyce.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me say that, unfortunately, everything you say fits with what we're talking about with the Gulf War illness. And I am not a doctor. I'm not trying to prescribe or diagnose, but let me say to you that everything you just said fits very, very much with the Gulf War illness, that it starts like pimples in the rash that Gulf War veterans have to a large extent. Then it goes into the ringworm size presentation, and usually the VA will then give a cream, a fungal cream for it, and you were lucky to get prescribed doxycycline if you were prescribed that. If that was what you said, I didn't understand, but because that's very unusual that they would do that. But that sounds like the presentation of it, becoming very sick, very tired. Those are all the symptoms. Now, the problem that we have with Gulf War veterans that are living in close relationship with each other is that people tend to eat and drink after each other. You pick up a glass somebody else has used, or you eat something that somebody else had, and that's one of the problems. And I would say to you that the possibility is there, very much so. Now, there is the blood test like we were talking about, but it costs $150. On the screen right now, what you're seeing is a terramycin powder and tetracycline for fish. And unfortunately, that is what Gulf War veterans have done, is they have gone to the feed stores because they cannot get the antibiotics. Our military are now going to feed stores to get the antibiotics to treat themselves and their families, which is incredibly atrocious. So that's why we've agreed to pay for doxycycline for anyone that cannot afford it, is that we will find the money. We will get the money for you. We don't want any veteran going to a feed store. But the answer is yes to his question, is that is what I'm hearing from other Gulf War veterans.
Okay, next caller, you're on the air with Joyce Isaacs and Joyce. Before we do that, let me just mention that, Joyce, I want to mention, wait a minute, hold on just a minute, caller.
We need to take these
Thank you for holding, by the way. When is you're starting a new radio program?
Well, not right now. I'm doing editorials. Can you imagine? I would have an opinion in the the morning drive and the afternoon drive, and well, they started last week, and then I went out and recorded some today. So, my boss said, "You're just too sweet." But he doesn't realize that I can, call you something and make you really like it. You know that, Jeff. But that's what I'm doing for now, so I'm getting a chance to write a little bit.
It's on K News.
K News, 1530.
15? Okay. Okay, caller, you're on the air. Hello.
Hear me?
Yes, sir.
This is Recon Robert.
Hello, brother.
How you doing?
You're on with Joyce Isaacs and Joyce Riley.
Yes. I attended Joyce's seminar yesterday. This is a angel sitting on your right.
She is.
No, that's very kind of you. Thank you.
For the young man that's the non-vet, I know I can't mention names, but I got rid of my dose of that crap with herbal remedies, homeopathic. But I do have some questions.
You ever heard of that before?
Yes, I have. Yes, I recommend looking into it.
Yes. There's a person in Colorado who has a wonderful remedy. It takes about a year.
Okay, wait a minute, caller. I'm sorry. We're going to have to do something here. We got to go to the black thing for a minute.
Tell him about George Bush and his wife getting ill.
Wait just a minute, Robert. Okay, we're going to have to. Okay, go ahead, and I guess we can go on then. Go ahead. I'm sorry. We're changing tapes, so we're going to put this on rotation, so we got to do this.
Yes, sir. I understand that Mr. and Mrs. Bush got ill. And
that is correct.
Yeah.
George Bush was in Saudi Arabia for Thanksgiving of 1990, and he did come down with a disease called Graves' disease. This Graves' disease is something that we're seeing among many, many Gulf War veterans. Whether he got it from that, I don't know or not. I could never say. But Barbara did get it, and to one of the physicians I was talking to, he said that the chances of getting it all in the same family at the same time is just statistically impossible.
Thank you. Now the other question is, how many known cases do we have around the world, not just here in America, but other armed forces?
Okay, with the military, or with the, let me talk about the military coalition forces, is that we know that there were 26 coalition or 27 coalition countries that served during the Gulf War. Out of that, one country, and only one country, does not report sick and dying Gulf War veterans, and that is France. So all the other coalition countries that served alongside of us are ill now and have sick Gulf War veterans, dying Gulf War veterans.
Yes, ma'am. But is there any statistic on deaths in these other nations?
Well, the only thing I can tell you that Dr. Nicholson has shared with me is that 20% of the people in the theater of operations now report illnesses within their country, and that would be United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, all except with the exception of Syria. We don't have any figures on Syria, but that 20% of those populations are ill now. We know that there have been at least 1 million and we believe 2 million deaths in Iraq. Now, one of the concerns I have is that these children they keep showing on TV and all these deaths that are a result of the embargoes, the UN-imposed embargoes, may not be that. They may be as a result of the Gulf War illness, because we know it's over there. All you have to do is talk to Iranian and Iraqi, both. But Iranian and Iraqi taxi drivers, and they can tell you about the deaths that they've been having over there and the deformities in the children.
Let me just mention something. You know, I had a friend, I went up to Ohio last June, and an old friend of mine from 20 years back mentioned to me, he never believed it, you know, he didn't listen to a lot of things I said. Well, I don't really talk to him that much anymore, but he brought up that he had a brother that recently died. He was 40 years old, and they believed that it was linked to what you're saying. He even knew who you were and had been studying your tapes and everything. So, I mean, when it hits somebody directly that you...
That's right, and that's why I think everybody better start. If you don't have any other motive except a selfish motive, you better start listening.
Everybody better understand how serious this is. This is not my opinion, and this is not my documentation. This is government documentation that I brought with me that shows that they have known the truth about this disease also. When is it going to stop?
But we're not real sure how it's spread. That's what's so
Well, it's spread, first of all, by blood transfusions. We know that the Gulf War veterans that came back and were encouraged to donate blood at their Guard and Reserve units, you know, when you have a unit training activity on the weekends and your commander tells you to donate blood, you don't say, well, sir, I don't feel like it today. You donate.
But all that's been stopped, hasn't it?
No, it has not.
It
Absolutely not. No, Gulf War veterans are going into blood banks all over this country every day and donating blood. And because there is no Gulf War illness. Don't you understand?
Oh, I forgot.
The Pentagon says there is no Gulf War illness. Therefore, it's okay.
I don't know, but I hope I don't have to have a blood transfusion.
Exactly.
I'm being selfish now. Okay.
Exactly. And we have made this allegation against the blood banks. And of course, as we go into blood banks and I talk with the directors and tell them that they are on notice, here's the evidence right here, it's communicable. It says so right here in 103-600. It says the disease is communicable. Now, if you don't understand communicable means in blood, in semen, in bodily fluids, why do you think? You were talking about, is this population control? I'm not saying it was meant as population control, but I am saying that if you have a disease and you allow your people in the general population to get it, and you allow people to have blood transfusions and disperse this disease, it is going to control your population whether you want to or not.
Well, not only that, Joyce, but I kind of look at things as maybe, I don't know if you're familiar with the Hegelian principle, where you create the crisis, and then you create fear and hysteria, and in step 3 you come in with the solution, meaning bigger government, more more taking over taxes and resources. You come in and present the solution in step 3 for the problem you created in step 1 and 2.
Oh,
I'm suggesting that the enemy, that the people that control this system, do things like that. That's
I know.
what I'm suggesting.
I understand you're suggesting that. But listen to this. The John Birch Society has just accused me in their latest magazine, in the New American, of trying to scare people into the New World Order. That's what they are saying. John McManus wrote me the nastiest letter saying that there was no Gulf War illness, or at least if there was a government cover-up, the New American would have printed it.
May I interrupt you briefly, and then I'll let get off?
Sure, I'm sorry.
I've got one comment to say, and this is to only for help. I challenge all true Christians to do like we are going to do. Save an extra 10%, a tithe, to send to your people.
We can't do that. We can't do that.
We don't do that.
Hey, cut it.
Right.
Well, I'm sorry, Robert. We can't do that. Disconnect him real quick. We can't do that down here. We got suspended for doing that down here. Okay, next caller. You're on the air.
Hello. I would like to ask Joyce if she knows. See, I got a letter from Dr. Nichols when I was in prison, and in regards to the same thing. And do you know of any epidemic of this being broken out in the TDC system through the John Seeley Hospital through chemical testing?
An epidemic of it in the John Seeley?
Well, no, it was supposed to come from the John Seeley Hospital, but the same symptoms, same epidemic of chemical testing before Gulf War treatment. We have a lot of inmates in the Texas prison system now that have the same symptoms, but many of the institutional doctors are putting it off to various other types of illness.
Right. Let me ask you a question. Have you, you said you were were you tested for it?
No, I was not tested, but I had an inmate in the cell next to me who had been tested for it, and he had the same symptoms you just described earlier on the show. And there are others in the same unit, and we have received word through the Coalition of Prisoners' Rights in New Mexico that this came out through John Seeley Hospital.
Okay, let me explain this whole system. Did you have anything else to say, or do you want me to just answer you on the air?
Thanks for your call, brother.
You betcha.
Okay, let me explain why the prisoners have something to do with this. He was stating that he was a prisoner at Texas Department of Corrections. We now know from some of the research that Dr. Nicholson has done, as well as a lady named Sally Medley, who was, by the way, at the meeting last night from Huntsville, Texas, has been doing a lot of research into where this disease started. In the 1980s, we found the same mycoplasmal outbreak of the same biological warfare agent that we're talking about right now that Gulf War veterans have was found in Huntsville, Texas, at the Texas Department of Corrections. Now, we now know that some of the doctors that were working on this as a research project, and we also know that they were there at Huntsville at that time. We know that some immunizations were given to some of the prisoners there, and it was called a flu vaccine, though it was given intradermally in this area, which is never done. We know that people such as what he was just talking about came down ill with this disease. And right now in Huntsville, Texas, there are something like 67 cases of multiple sclerosis. And the town is, I believe, 35,000. There were prisoners that got this disease. Those prisoners, many of them have since died. The prisoners gave the guards there the disease. The guards gave it to their families. There are about 350 people now that have this disease in Huntsville, Texas. There is an ongoing investigation right now. I won't mention by whom, but they are now looking into this as being perhaps the testing ground prior to the Gulf War of the vaccination that we received. So it all comes together. But what he was saying is that the guy in the cell next to him was positive for this mycoplasma, and that is probably why. TDC at Huntsville was the one area where we found the most people with this disease.
Now, you know something, Joyce? When people doubt what we're saying, or they say, you know, you're just radical, or da-da-da, and our government wouldn't do this, what has come to light in the last, 2 or 3 years, or 5 years maybe, the Southerners, the black men that were, do you know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely.
Okay. Tell us, you're a nurse, tell us what happened, because they were just told a bold-faced lie, and many of them died. It was treating what, syphilis?
Yes.
Oh, that's the Tuskegee experiment.
Yeah.
Yes.
You see, these experiments, and we're not talking about just Tuskegee. There have been experiments
But
going
this
on
is
since
the one we
1940,
know
1950s.
about.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
There have been many of
Are
these.
you aware of the swine flu epidemic?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. This whole thing about mandatory government shots.
Oh, I wouldn't take a shot for anything right now.
but that
There's no way.
Yeah, but the Tuskegee thing, they had people that were sick.
Right. The story is that basically 399 black men, if you look at the story that appeared in the AP story February 21st of this year, 399 black men were allowed to get the disease syphilis and allowed to have it for 40 years, in which it was untreated, even though there was penicillin at the time that would treat it. 40 years.
40
now,
years.
the AP story in the Pittsburgh Press said, the Pittsburgh newspaper, because I was there the day it came out, and I didn't sleep that night. I was so angry. It says, 399 black men from 1932 to 1972, the government allowed these men to suffer and die. That was the words from the AP story. The government experimented upon these people and allowed them to suffer and die.
Because they were using them just
As an
like
experiment.
lab
That's right.
animals.
And you know, my response to that is, how could any real American not say, I'm sorry, that is it? There it is, bold-faced in the newspaper, that the government had allowed them to suffer and die during an experiment. Now, it wasn't just 399 men. It was over 6,000 people that were all involved in this because their spouses got it. Their children were born deformed.
Yes.
But nobody talks about the other 6,000 people. And so when Clinton comes across the stage and he introduces apologizing on behalf of America and the government, which, by the way, I need to tell him I had nothing to do with that. And I would never have had anything to do with that.
But that was when we were so innocent. That's what gets me about it.
Oh, yeah,
was
it was a long time ago.
Yeah,
but you know
it's a
what?
long time
1972 is when it ended. That was the last part of the study. You know what I say
hadn't ended
when
yet,
Clinton
Joyce.
comes across the stage and says we apologize, and he talked about how this 98-year-old guy has a garden of his own. He made it look like it's good to have syphilis, you know. I mean, he was inappropriate as all get out. And then I didn't want to see him come across that stage with an apology. I wanted him to bring a list of names and indictments of people that were going to spend the rest of their lives in prison for what they had done during that experiment. That violates everything this country stands for.
Well, it violates what we stand for as humans.
That's right.
But the thing about it, it's still not over. Like you say, who do we know that still has it from a child, an adult, or somebody, you know, that's still suffering from what was passed on because it's so highly contagious?
How much of the disease?
How many blind people?
How much of the disease in Georgia, You have to
How many
excuse us,
people-
but
yeah,
we're
no,
talking
that's
here.
quite all
mad.
right. Well,
Just
I'm going to
mad.
hit you with these when you're
Okay.
done.
How much of the disease in Georgia
We're
and
not taking a
Mississippi
break.
and
We're going
Alabama?
Right. Babies
Yeah.
that were born with things wrong with
Joyce
them that
do
it
one.
shouldn't have happened. Yes. Read your website.
Yeah,
real
okay.
quick. Okay.
www.gulfwarvets.com is the website, and the address to write to us is Gulf War, 3506 Highway 6 South, number 117, Sugar Land, Texas, 774-78-4401. The phone number is 281-587-5437. Leave a number and I'll call you back.
Let me just now let me just insert some of these things. I've been doing some investigation myself. I'm just going to hit you with it.
Do it.
The World Health Organization. That's a loving organization. Now there are definite conclusions coming that they are actually linking the World Health Organization to the spread of a lot of these contagious diseases. Now, but let me just take you back. Fluoride in our water. I'm sorry, what I submit to you that they are poisonous on every front. Aspartame, that was used by the Nazis, which is now in NutraSweet and our Diet Cokes and things like this. There's all types of different evidence. This food irradiation, you hearing about this food, which kills the live enzymes from our food. What I'm suggesting is through our food and water supply and whatnot, these people who I believe are the enemies of the American people and the world are literally poisonous just in their basic food and water systems. Have you pondered any of that, Joyce?
Oh, have I? I will tell you first of all, believe me, I have.
I just want to tell you.
Believe me, I have. I mean, I lay awake nights thinking about this stuff.
I drank fluoride water and it will not make you sterile, okay?
Well, no, this is true, though. Has been linked to stomach and liver cancer.
Okay, let me tell you something.
If you drink enough of it.
I got some...
What about food irradiation? You know anything
Oh,
about
wait a
that?
minute. Hold on a second.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
Let me start back with fluoride because I want to mention this to you. Under Project MK Ultra, which a lot of people know of that, there were 175 sub-projects under MK Ultra, which people don't know about. One of them, and I got the declassified documents. Have you ever seen the declassified documents on MK Ultra?
No, I haven't.
See, everybody talks about it, but nobody has the documents. So I went to where I could find a copy of the only one of the few remaining MK Ultra documents, and I got it. And I had to take it one page at a time off the microfilm, but I got it. And in there is a Dr. Geschichter from the Geschichter Institute at Georgetown University, who's being asked, how did you spend all your money from MK Ultra that you were given, the millions of dollars? And he said, I was investigating fluoride and chlorine and rocket fuels, halogen derivatives. And they said, what was your response? And he said, I found they caused cancer. Now that was in a 1977 congressional hearing. Georgetown University professor said that. I don't think that hit the news, do you?
But they care about our teeth.
Exactly, they care. Rat poison.
But the aspartame, too. The Hitler used aspartame. It's a subtle, it kind of works the same thing. It makes it docile.
Well,
Have
aspartame,
you heard that?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've heard all of the negative that goes on with aspartame.
But see, this loving FDA is approving these things, supposedly, and we're supposed to believe that what they're saying, what they approve is good for us.
Oh, absolutely. We're supposed to believe whatever they tell us and whatever's advertised.
Right. Food
Yeah,
irradiation.
did you know that FDA does not test anything? Did you know that? They depend upon the pharmaceutical companies to test them. Oh, they're going to be honest.
Yeah.
All they have at stake is millions of dollars
What
to
about
make.
food irradiation?
Oh,
Just real
will
quick.
they?
Oh,
Right.
food irradiation. Now you're going to get me really going. Food irradiation makes me livid.
But they got to protect our beef.
Oh, no. No. There was
minute,
only
wait a
one
minute.
thing that you could not irradiate, that legally you could not irradiate.
What?
Beef. And lo and behold, we have the Hudson Farms problem. Isn't that
Yeah,
amazing?
yeah.
I'll tell you what, get a book called The Food That
We
Would
can't
Last
say get a book, but in a book.
in a book
Yeah,
that
in
could
a
be
book.
found at a
Oh,
used
no.
library, a used bookstore.
Could you give a list of what we
Yeah, we
could
got-
eat? Because I think it'll be shorter.
It's scary. They're going to irradiate everything because, think about it, if nothing will grow in it, right? No microorganisms will grow in it. Well, how good is that going to be for you?
Yeah.
Does it change the DNA structure? Absolutely it
Well,
does.
how about all the antibiotics they've been giving poultry and beef in all these years? Don't they give that to
absolutely.
feedlot?
But you see, people don't
But
understand
that's
that.
negative too, right? All the
Hello.
antibiotics.
Incredible.
Sure.
Our
Yeah.
weight limits
Oh,
are
wait a
going-
minute. Have we got a phone call?
Yeah, hold on just a minute.
We're being rude. Okay.
No, that's all right. I just want to. So you studied.
Keep on talking.
No, go ahead, ma'am.
No,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
We're done.
Hi, Jeff. This is Chris.
Well, how you doing, sweetness?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good. I wanted to tell Joyce that it was a great show yesterday. And I'm kind of sorry if it seemed kind of disrespectful when you were talking about the soldier named Scott and you showed his picture 2 weeks before he died. But right when you said that, Joyce, that flag came off that wall, and I had to get a chuckle because I knew he was there with you and he was supporting you.
Oh, that's kind of you. Thank you for saying that.
So I just wanted to make sure that you didn't think it was disrespectful because I had a smile on my face when you said that.
Thank you for saying that. Let me explain what she is saying. A while ago, they showed a young man that had a tube in his nose that was very sick on the
yes,
picture.
it was just-
And let me explain what that's all about. That is one of America's heroes. And I don't do that lightly. I don't show that picture up there lightly, but that was one of America's heroes. That was Scott Siefken. He had served in the Army. He served in the National Guard. He came back from the Gulf War. He had a rash. And the VA told him that there was only one thing they could do to save his life, and that was they needed to remove his skin. Well, during the meeting yesterday, as I was talking about Scott and we put his picture up there, the American flag fell down at that time. And she was saying that at the time that she had let out sort of a laugh or a comment, and what she was saying was Scott was with us there at the meeting. Because Scott is...
That's right. I believe that stuff.
Uh-huh.
More than Jeff, but no, I believe that's
And
right.
Scott comes from one of the most patriotic families. He had 5 brothers and sisters in the military, or 5 sisters that served in the military. 5 out of the 6 kids served in the military.
And the flag fell off the wall.
And the flag fell off the wall at the time we showed his picture. But that's one of America's heroes. In fact, they did remove Scott's skin, and the picture that we had that was on the TV a little while ago was 2 weeks before Scott died. And that is an experiment that went awry, and he died. And I will just say this in all due respect for Scott, is that 2 weeks after he died, his only son was born. And his little boy has a goal now, and that is to go get his daddy with a rocket ship and bring him back so that everybody will quit crying.
That's him right there.
That's Scott Siefken right there, one of America's heroes. Now that's the real Gulf War illness Dan Rather doesn't tell you about.
No,
That's
but
a real Gulf War illness that CNN won't tell you about. And his mother asked me if I would show that picture because America needs to understand what's happening to its veterans. It's horrible to look at that. I know. It's very uncomfortable to look at that picture. But that is what happens when you serve your country and you're guilty of nothing more than willing to die for it. You come back here, and he was told he had a mental problem. And the sad part is his family now has that rash. And they came to the meeting that we did up in Waterloo, Iowa, and his mother held out her hand and said, see, now I've got it. And it's spreading into the family now. So the tragedy is, it's all these experiments all the way along. Is it fluoride, chlorine, vaccinations, flu shots? I would not get a flu shot. I would not get an immunization now because of what I know.
okay, now there's a new flu. Have you seen that? Like in the last 24 hours, it's Hong Kong. Would you love that?
And how do they always know
Yeah.
what we're
Yeah,
going to be hit by?
yeah, how do they know what we're going to be hit?
Yeah, what we're going to
Don't
do.
you love that
Start in
CNN
Hong
now?
Kong. Okay.
And CNN now they're telling you where are going to be the big flu cities in the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, they're telling us.
Are they smart or what?
Yeah.
They either have a psychic working for them, or I'm not sure how they can figure that out.
What it boils down to, this government, as far as I'm concerned, it's mirrors Rome. You know, the modern Roman emperors who were just slave masters.
Bread and games.
I would literally suggest to you.
Incredible.
We're actually running out of time here. I want to give. Do you have any before we get to our closing comments here? Do you have any? Okay, we've I think we've established for anybody who watches the show that this government is totally irresponsible.
They're not taking care of their veterans.
Yeah, they have another agenda.
That's right.
Okay. Do you have any solutions for this or anything that you're fighting for, Joyce?
First of all, I want Austin to come together and form an Operation Braveheart. I want to see Operation Braveheart started here in every town across the nation where they take care of their veterans, because these guys need help. They're too sick. They need support. And if that means we're going to go to the TV stations and the mainstream media and with placards or something, you know, whatever we decided as a town to do, every town across the country needs to do something. They need to get involved with these veterans.
What's that, like
Secondly,
a non-profit type thing?
Oh, it won't even be that. It'll be just loosely grouped people that come together because they care.
Operation Braveheart.
Braveheart.
Right.
We want somebody to take responsibility for starting that here in Austin. It can be Gulf War veterans, friends of Gulf War veterans, family of Gulf War veterans, whatever. Then we need to start writing our congressmen some serious letters, like holding their feet to the fire, like Phil Graham said on this committee. Phil Graham has full knowledge the disease is communicable. He has full knowledge that the disease is killing our veterans. His name is in here, and he knows about it. And I want to know when these people are going to be held accountable for their actions. And our own Phil Graham, having been one of the 15 people that sat on that committee, is extremely accountable. I want us to get involved as an American population, as a group, to start looking at evidence behind what we talk about. Get these documents. Some of them aren't available any longer from Congress or from the Senate, but get it, do your investigation, and find out if I'm really telling you the truth, because if I'm telling you the truth, then we're in more trouble than even just this nice conversation here between the three of us can even portray. We're in more trouble because that means we are intentionally allowing our military to die. And if that is true, if it will happen to our military, you know the saying, they came for the Jews and I wasn't a Jew?
Right.
They came for the Catholics and I wasn't a Catholic. Well, they're coming for your military right now, one person at a time, and they're taking them. And if we don't do something about it, it's going to be us next.
Hello?
Joyce?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, caller, real quickly. We're running out of time here.
This is Babs. I want to know where you get printed literature to give to people.
Well, just go ahead and get a hold of our comment line. That's would
Yeah.
be the way to handle that. Put up the comment line, and when any message that comes to Joyce, actually we can put up your number.
You can contact me and I can tell you where to find it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Which government documents you need
Go
to
ahead
get
and
a
read
hold
it
of.
again real quick.
Okay,
Joyce.
Gulf War, the address, Gulf War,
Wait.
3506, Highway 6 South, number 117, Sugar Land, Texas, 77478-4401. Phone number 281-587-5437. Website www.gulfwarvets.com. Gulfwarvets.com. And I can tell you which documents are available
Yeah, I
from the
want to
government.
know why they had to remove his skin.
Actually, we're running out of time here. I'm sorry.
We don't know. We don't know.
But
Okay, that's got to be the last call for tonight.
But like we were
Go ahead,
saying,
Joyce.
the thing that people better start to realize, because Saddam is over there trying to bait us again. We're not through with him, and it's almost justice because we created the little fellow, and he's our little child, right?
That's right.
Say it, Joyce. You get
We
so
armed
mad.
him.
We
We
armed him, and now we've earned him. We're going to really
That's
have to. This is not something that is going to be, when you start dealing with viruses.
It's
you can't-
deadly.
no, it's deadly.
It's biological terrorism, and 25 other countries have these same biological agents because we sold them to 25 other
And
countries.
they cannot differentiate these little things that come out and get you. They can't say, let's get the people in uniform. They get whoever is there, and it may be you
right.
or your child.
That's right.
And he's going to level bad things on us.
He or someone, and we don't know who is, but we know we're being set up for it, though.
And they're busy cooking up their little recipes, aren't they?
And the sad part is that I do think it is going to happen in this country. I think
Oh, Joyce.
I think biological terrorism, unfortunately, is imminent. We have given too many countries this. There are some people that believe that up to 50 countries now have this. And we're making an enemy in the Middle East. We're making enemies many places by going in with these UN actions. And I'm afraid we're setting ourselves up as a target.
But this one is a whole new battlefield.
Oh,
You
the
how do
days
you
of bullets
fight
are
it
over. The bullet
Forget
wars are
it.
gone.
Yeah.
Right.
That would start to look good, probably,
Oh, yeah.
compared to what's going to happen to us if we don't get a handle
It's
on
Pandora's
this.
box. We have opened Pandora's box,
Truly.
and we are going to be the victims of it.
I would suggest to you that if some little foreign excursion outfit doesn't do it, the big enemy could very well do that.
We know that
Who
somebody's
knows?
setting us up for it.
Yeah.
You bet.
Okay, I want to just give y'all, we got 2 minutes left. Joyce, closing comments?
Well, I just hope everybody's going to listen, and I hope that you're going to recognize the fact that Joyce Riley is truly a hero, and I think a lot of us have. No, you are, and she's a true patriot and a woman, and I'm proud of you.
Well, thank you. Let me say.
Good luck to you on your radio show.
Oh, good
Joyce.
luck to you, honey. Don't kiss me. You might have something I'd catch.
Joyce Riley?
Not you, but anybody. I want to say that I believe I was healed for this reason. I believe I was healed. This is not anything I've done. This is my mission that I've been given, because I will never forget where I've come from. I was sick. I was very, very sick. And I will not forget. I will not ever forget, because there are Gulf War veterans out there that are sick right now as we speak. Their wives, their spouses, their children. And I want them to know that we will be there. And America will care as soon as America finds out. And that's why we need every person out there to circulate these videos.
Keep talking.
Get this information out. Get the documents yourself. Don't believe me. Get the documents yourself. And then we've got to move forward together.
Joyce Isaacs, God, I appreciate you coming on the Jeff Davis Show.
Anytime, Jeff. I love it.
Joyce Riley, God bless you,
Thank
dear.
you.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
With that, folks, we're going to wind it down. I appreciate the callers and our guests here tonight. God bless you, folks, and death to the New World Order. God bless you.
Hello, folks. This is Jeff Davis with the legendary Jeff Davis Show from Central Texas, USA. And I love Mike Hanson Archives. Peace out, baby.
Well, hello, folks, and stay tuned for more classics here on Mike Hanson Archives and our new channel, Waco Archives. And don't forget our oldest channel, Mike Hanson Archives, here on YouTube. Stay tuned for more, but make sure y'all get everybody to subscribe to Hanson Archives and the new one, Waco Archives. We're busy every day uploading more and more videos. We have hired somebody to do that and bought the equipment to do it. It's a lot of work. If you would like to help out with that situation, send us $25 and I will send you my book, and everything that comes in from my book will be used to fund these 3 channels. So stay tuned right here to YouTube and Facebook. I am Mike Hanson from Gonzales, Texas on Facebook. Thanks a lot and God bless.
On Monday on 6 o'clock. Come on, anybody want to come up here? All right, that's it. All right, who wants to lead it? Let Gene go. Go ahead. Yes, sir. All right. God bless the Republic. Death to the New World Order.